All right, ladies and gentlemen, at this time, we want to welcome you to Focus on Liberia. Good evening good afternoon, I should say, for those of you in the East Coast. It is the in the morning hours in my area here. And welcome to the broadcast here at Focus on Liberia. Today is Saturday and it is our Saturday special. In this Saturday special, we have a very special guest, Mr. Josiah Joekai Jr. Joe is our guest here at Focus on Liberia in this Saturday special. And in this Saturday special, we are discussing a topic that you must just take a break to listen to. We are talking about referendum. It just went down and the results are now promising. Many people predicted a Joe and his institution having to be one of those who predicted that this thing would not have gone well. It seems to be, from all indication, it did not go well. And so now that that has happened, we want to know, how did that all happen? Why were the missteps and the flaws, the constitutional irregularities, if you want to put it that way, or violations that took place for which this thing went down the way it did? Were there some things that needed to be done that did not happen, for which we are getting this result that is so much disappointing? Or did we just waste money? Well, Joe is here to help us understand all these questions. And not only that, what is needed now that we have had the experience? What is needed? Do we need a brand new constitution, or do we just need a constitutional reform? And how soon do we need that? Josiah Joker is an election practitioner and he has been following these things, and he's here representing the grassroots alternative movement, that is GAME. He is the uh, executive chairman of that institution, US based or diaspora based, and he is here to help us understand these matters. And so this is where you want to be today in this Saturday special here at Focus on Liberia. As always, I'm your guy, Anthony C. Joe, welcome to Focus on Liberia. Merry Christmas. I'm happy to have you. How you doing? Are you ready for this?
Certainly. As always, it's a pleasure to be here on Focus on Liberia. Like I said, I have so much respect for this institution. Focus on Liberia is an institution, as I see it, of men and women who are interested in the forward march of Liberia. And so the information you provide is very germane, in getting the country back on the trajectory, of successful recovery. So it's always my pleasure to be here and to share in the conversation. So I'm ready.
Joe there, he's really, but like I told you earlier, he is representing an institution. He having to be an executive chairman. Joe, please, for the sake of our audience, you represent an institution that is trying uh, to provide deeper understanding on this subject matter. What is that institution, and what has the institution been up to on this subject matter, referendum and constitutional reform?
Thank you, Anthony. The grassroots alternative movement is a grassroots organization, a broad-based organization, that has Liberians from all walks of life who are members of the institution. We built this institution for a little over a year now, and it's growing stronger every day. It seeks to ensure that Liberians fully understand their rights, roles, and responsibilities as citizens, so that they become patriotic and to contribute in terms of assisting their own government, helping their own government to improve their lives, for them to have a life of good quality, to have a nation that they can be proud of, to have a nation that others, from other countries across the globe can be proud to talk about, can be proud to visit. That's the kind of institution we have, and I'm proud to be one of those stalwarts uh, steering affairs of the institution. So the grassroots alternative movement, like you said, I am the executive chair for the diaspora dimension of the institution. We've been working assiduously, trying to make sure that we promote good governance, democracy in our country. With specific respect to your question regarding the referendum, the just ended December 8th referendum, we were clear about our role. We started off by writing the legislature, both houses, for that matter, the Senate and the House of Representatives, an official communication informing them that there was need for us to postpone the referendum for the reasons I'm going to cite. And then ensure that the Elections Commission in the entire country shift to 100% focus on the conduct of the senatorial election, which we saw as something that was a litmus test to the 2023 election, a litmus test in terms of testing the capacity of the Elections Commission, its impartiality. So we advise that be done. On the other hand, that we do not have a convoluted process where the Liberian people will be confused, especially voters, not knowing who to vote for, not knowing what the symbols and the text on the referendum ballot represent. So we actually advise the government, the executive, and we advise the legislature to ensure that we postpone the referendum. But all of our pleas fell on deaf ears. None was considered. The legislature did not even respond to our communication by any measure, not a phone call, not a line was sent to us, and our communication was very official. We submitted both hard and electronic copies of our request to the legislature. In fact, as a matter of fact, we sent emails to each legislator, making sure that they don't have any excuses, for not attending to that national and significant call. But again, we did not get any response from any of them. They proceeded with the conduct of the legislature. In fact, I can recall that some of the members of the staff of those legislators email us indicating that we could choose to go to court as our right as citizens of the country, but all was set for the referendum to be held. And we saw that was not in good faith. Judging from all that they did, I think there were other motives for which they proceeded with the conduct of both critical national events together. So we also realized that the Elections Commission was not ready in terms of having the resources, the requisite resources, and having time on their side to be able to provide a kind of education and information to the citizenry, especially the voters, to be able to move them to vote in the two elections in an informed manner. We saw that was not happening, and it was going to affect the referendum. The referendum was going to be treated as a SAR issue because that was not the interest of the Liberian people at the time. As critical as reforming the Constitution is concerned,
right,
that was not the interest of the Liberian people at the time. And so we call on them to ensure that the senatorial election was held and the referendum was postponed, but nobody listened.
Thank you. Josiah Joekai is our guest here, and he is a representative from the grassroots alternative movement, and he is actually the executive chairman of the diaspora dimension of that institution. They have been on this journey of advocating for the referendum to be postponed, but they were not listening to it. We went into the referendum, and the results that we continue to receive from the National Election Commission are not looking pretty at all. So, Joe, besides the results, before we can get to some of the preliminary results, you have feared some missteps and flaws in constitutional violations along the way. Did any of those things happen that you were able to recognize? And we want to know what are those? And please make it clear to our audience here. There were some missteps that happened that you have been able to, that you fear will have happened. Does those things happen?
Yeah, a lot happening along the way that were not supposed to happen. Firstly, beginning with the resolution that was passed by the legislature. I think the legislature passed a resolution that was comprised of 8 articles,
Okay.
for which they were supposed to derive 8 propositions. So the resolution was passed by the chair of the legislature in keeping with the Constitution, rightfully so, and then it had to be signed into law by the president, and an official gazette had to be produced by the executive in keeping with law, because Article 91 and 92 lay out clearly what the steps and procedures are for the conduct of referendum in Liberia. So in keeping with that, an official gazette was produced. The gazette encapsulated the entire 8 articles. But sadly, in the gazette, those 8 articles were condensed into 3 propositions. And that was wrong. That was the first misstep. That was the first wrongdoing. Article 92 provides that if the propositions are more than 1, each should be submitted separately. They should not be condensed. So that was the first wrongdoing. The propositions were condensed into 3, and that was wrong. So the Liberian people were informed about 3 propositions all along. They educated the Liberian people about that, especially in urban areas. Some activities took place in terms of education and awareness, though not significant, until there were calls by institutions like mine, the grassroots alternative movement, like the Coalition of Political Parties, and other civil society organizations. So the CPP took it to another level, and I'm sure being informed by some of the information provided by our institution, including other interest groups, and filed a writ of injunction. The Supreme Court acted, and I think the Supreme Court acted badly 5 days to the holding of the election and the referendum. Though the Supreme Court ruling was optional, advising the Commission not to proceed with the referendum once each of those articles did not stand on their own. And if the referendum should be conducted, that has to happen. So in good faith, the grassroots alternative movement congratulated the Supreme Court for its action because it felt that it was timely to take that decision. To safeguard our embryonic democracy, to keep it on track, and then consistent with our call to ensure that the Elections Commission conducts the special senatorial election only and not in combination of the referendum and the election. But the Elections Commission, again, did not listen. We made a special call to the executive, to the Elections Commission, that, hey, it was time for the Elections Commission to disregard the holding of this referendum, because you don't even have time to derive the symbols for the additional 5 propositions and the text for the Liberian people to understand in such limited time. So it was not going to be possible for them to vote, from an informed position. And we were going to get so many invalid ballots, referendum votes for that matter, because many people are just going to abandon it, just leave it, or some of them just mark it based on guesses, because many of them don't actually have the capacity to understand what those texts meant that were, attached to those symbols that were lately derived by the commission. And it was not from a broad-based perspective. It was not from a citizen consultation perspective. Many people did not even know what was going on, did not even understand the significance of the referendum. So we felt that that was going to be a failure, and we called many times that it was going to be treated as a side issue because of the importance of the senatorial election to the political parties, the candidates, and the country as a whole, because it bordered on the governance of the country. It bordered on improving the economy of the country, making sure that they had the right people in the right seats at the legislature. And
Joe,
so that alone was enough to undermine the entire referendum.
And Joe, let me bring this time factor in. The National Election Commission, I would say, knew that they were to conduct a referendum. And they had time, there's a required time. Did they actually do a good job with the timing? And what were the failures along the way with the timing of the referendum for which things went the way they went?
Right. I think they did a good job by deriving a very good operational plan for the holding of the referendum and the election. But I think the decision to combine the two critical events was wrong. And the Elections Commission consistently called on the government to make the funding available in a timely manner for them to proceed with the holding of the events. That did not happen. The government did not make the funding available. And let me tell you something, you can have all the beautiful plans in elections management. But if you don't have the funding at the right time to ensure that each activity is executed consistent with your timelines, definitely you are going to have setbacks. And the gun referendum and the elections, were not exceptions to that. The Elections Commission did not have the timing the funding in a timely manner. And let me tell you, the timeline is very unique when you set it up. Once you set it up and say, for example, on September 15, you must conclude, the candidate nomination, that is finalize the candidate listing and everything, it has to be done. If you don't do it, it's going to run into the next event. And the next event is going to run into the next one. So elections management is unique. It's a delicate kind of system. And there are many people who don't understand it that way, especially people at policy level in government don't understand it, who have the responsibility to make resources available. They don't understand it. Sometimes the commission is telling them about the importance of executing the activities in a timely manner, but they don't get it. All the thing is a big bluff. It's something that anytime you have the money, you can do it. Because if you don't do the candidate nomination on time, then you will not be able to do the recruitment and the deployment of the civic educators and monitors who are supposed to carry the message out there. You won't do it on time. If you don't have the money to do it on time, you will not be able to acquire the logistics to have the ballots on time, printed on time, and brought into the country. Because Liberia, we are still printing our ballots out. We're still printing it in Ghana. Bulk Press is the one printing it. As far as I know, since I've been with the commission, Bulk Press have been doing that printing. And the state did it. I'm sure they the one did it for the gun referendum and the election. And the ballots have to come in on time because they need to be sorted and distributed to all parts of the country. You need the logistics. You need to hire the vehicles and recruit those who are supposed to distribute the materials, the elections materials across the country. In Liberia, we still don't have the confidence in our systems to the extent that the Elections Commission has the liberty to be able to use public vehicles, government vehicles, to cut down spending. We still don't have that confidence. We tried in 2011. The political parties said no. We got close to using the military trucks, for the dissemination of materials so that we can just prevent spending money on that part of our budget. But it didn't work. They didn't accept it. So the government has to make the funding available on time. That didn't work. But also, I would blame the Elections Commission because you are supposed to man up to the executive to say that if this doesn't happen, this is not going to happen at this time. And the commission was supposed to advise the executive that, hey, we are not constrained to push this referendum thing along with the election. The election, the senatorial election is so important, it's so significant. Let's concentrate on it. Let's make sure it's successful to strengthen our democracy. And then we can hold a referendum as a single issue, where we can put all of our focus into it. We can have all hands on deck and make sure that we reform our constitution in a way that reflects good governance. The election commission was supposed to advise the executive and advise the legislature in that respect, because we did it before. That's how it works. All those institutions work together, none work in isolation of the other. The judiciary is there to interpret the laws, the elections law when there are difficulties, when there are when there's confusion, when there are concerns. The legislature is there to promulgate statutes that were in keeping with the law that established the Elections Commission, Article 89 in the Constitution, and to ensure that the Elections Commission can smoothly carry out the conduct of elections in the country. But that did not happen. That conversation did not really take place in a realistic way.
Mr. Joekai,
the institutions.
Mr. Joekai, one of the reasons you did express fear to the point that you have to ask for a postponement was the fact about how the voters, the citizens, needed to be educated or sensitized on the conduct of the referendum. Earlier, you mentioned the symbols. The symbols were not communicated. The people did not even know the symbols because you said earlier, 5 days till the referendum was when the Supreme Court ruled that no, you can't combine, so you have to separate. So in 5 days period, they were able to come up with new symbols that the citizens have no idea of. So my question is, how should this process, or should have been done in terms of the sensitization and education to the voters for it to have been successful?
I would begin by saying that referendum is an issue-based election. It's not a facial election where you will see faces on the ballot. And you can instantly make a decision, probably if you saw Joekai's face on the ballot or Ansoni's face on the ballot, you could instantly make, a decision. But referendum is not like that. On a ballot, you have a symbol representing the issue that the voter is supposed to vote for. And that symbol is also associated with a text, a few words that make a sentence that applies to the symbol. For the voter to be able to read. So reading is also a part of it. So you have the symbol and you have the text. So in no way that 5 days leading up to the conduct of the polls that any average Liberian voter would have voted, really, from an informed position on any of the issues. And we can keep taking risk with referendum that seek to amend certain provision of the Constitution, because amending the Constitution is simply trying to improve the Constitution so that you can improve governance. So that was not possible. 5 days was not possible. If the entire time for which the referendum and the election were being planned was not enough, how could 5 days be enough? So that was not just possible to educate the average Liberian voter, to disseminate information about the referendum. Like I said, a convoluted process. Let me tell you something. You had 8 propositions, and then you had the ballot for the senatorial election with candidates for the average Liberians to mark. That was a difficult situation. That was a convoluted process for the average Liberian voter. Besides that, in Sano and in Monserrato, districts number 2 and 9, you also had by-election ballots for them to vote for. So in those districts, you had the senatorial ballot, you had the representative ballot, and then you had the referendum ballot. That's That was too much, especially in the situation where voters did not get used to seeing the mock ballot time enough ahead of time of the conduct of the polls. That was a difficult situation. So it was just a guessing situation for them as a whole. And so what many people ended up doing was just to concentrate on the senatorial ballot. Trust me, ahead of the polls, Liberians just generally concentrated on the senatorial ballot, the senatorial election, how they would make the best decision. And so, as we said prior to December 8th, that the referendum was going to be treated as a side issue, that happened exactly just as we said it prior to the conduct of the polls. And we were speaking from experience. We had several referenda in our country, but the most recent ones were the one in 1986 to adopt a new constitution, the current constitution, the 1986 constitution, which for the most part I refer to as the Samuel Doe Constitution. And then the other one we had was in 2011, which I was part of in terms of its organization and conduct. And in that referendum, in fact, we did a lot. A lot of resources were put in. We had a time to do education across the country. However, the response of the Liberian people was very negative before even the polls. Many of them took it as they versus us, meaning that, again, the elite class was just finding a way, maneuvering to change the laws in their interest against the ordinary citizen. We faced the citizens. We sat with them. We spoke with them on the significance of the amendments of the reform, but they understood it differently. And that was shown in the result in the 2011 referendum. And the result was so embarrassing,
So, Joe,
of the 1.7 million registered voters, and Sonny, we only had 615,000 people voting in the referendum. And none of those, after we did the tabulation and the calculation of the referendum results, none of the 4 propositions received a 2/3 vote. You know how one of them received a vote to pass? No. Because one of the political parties filed a lawsuit against the Elections Commission that we were counting wrongly. And that's how the Supreme Court ruled that the invalid vote should be set aside. In fact, should be deleted. So both the yes vote and the no vote should be considered in the counting process. That's how one of the propositions passed. And that was the one to undo the absolute majority for the legislature and to have a simple majority. That's how it passed. So that was a failure. It was only the intervention of the court. Otherwise, it was a complete failure. And that's why we said this time in the lead up to the conduct of the December polls, hey, let's be careful. Let's learn from the lessons of the past. Let us take a critical look at what went wrong in 2011. Let's correct those and make sure that we conduct this process as a single issue. Because the first thing in 2011 will combine the general elections and the referendum, which was not positive, which was not a good thing. And that's why sometimes I'm worried that we as a people in Liberia, we don't value lessons of the past. We don't review,
Joe,
past.
So, Joe, looking at what we know now, who all dropped the ball and how did they drop the ball? I know you talk about NEC, you talk about the Supreme Court, and you talk about the national legislature. How did they drop the ball? What they should have done that they did not do that got up to this point of what we now know to be a referendum that is not looking pretty at all?
We're now casting an doom here. NEC has now concluded the results tabulation, and counting. Yes, so probably something dramatic could happen. But from the trends I see, the trends of the results, I'm not sure any of those 8 propositions will receive the required 2/3 votes for them to pass. Yeah. If that happens, well, we will have to look deeper into that. And I'm sure lawsuits will ensue also. if that happens. Like I say, I'm not casting doom, but it will be a drama. Okay. Talking about who dropped the ball, firstly, I would like to begin by saying that the legislature passed a resolution with 8 articles, and the legislature supposed to be a body that knows the law, because they did not pass that resolution with 2/3 votes in isolation of Articles 91 and 92. So if they did that and then condense the 8 articles into 3 propositions, that was a violation of the law. And that resolution was not supposed to be acted upon by the Elections Commission. It was not even supposed to be signed into law by the president. So they dropped the ball. The executive, headed by the president, dropped the ball. The Elections Commission's failure to go back to the executive and say, no, this resolution, before we can even do an official gazette, this resolution has to be looked at for the second time, because each of these articles is supposed to stand on their own as a proposition, not supposed to be condensed by any measure. So the legislature dropped the ball. The executive dropped the ball. The Elections Commission did. And it was sad for me that they took that resolution and transformed it into an official gazette that was disseminated, though inadequately, because Article 92 says that information should be disseminated to the public through the information services. What was the role of the Ministry of Information? Because that's the information machinery of the government. What was the role of the Ministry of Information? Making sure that the citizenry is educated adequately, informed adequately, by way of communicating the official gazette to the people. No. It was just done in a subtle way. It was just something done around Monrovia. I don't even want to say the entire Montserrat, around Monrovia, because that's the deceptive picture that is always giving to the world, that a lot is being done to educate people on the democratic process, which is not true.
So Joe, will you say that the Supreme Court did not also help here?
The Supreme Court had to make the decision it made because it was firstly educating the neck on where it went wrong, that you are not supposed to conduct a referendum with 8 articles passed in the resolution, and those 8 articles condensed into 3 propositions. By law, that was wrong. That's the first education the Supreme Court was giving the Elections Commission. And the Supreme Court was indirectly telling the Elections Commission, do not proceed with the holding of the referendum because you do not have sufficient days leading up to the conduct of the December 8 polls to be able to derive symbols and text of the remaining 5 propositions alongside with the citizenry, so that they get to know what they will vote for. They will make the right decision.
But Joseph, I think that you caught the Supreme Court a slack here, because they should. You talk about the constitutional violation that was carried on by the legislature. So they were in error completely constitutionally. So why couldn't the Supreme Court say, hey, you are in error, you cannot proceed? They were not bold enough. They left a little window for the Election Commission to act on.
The Supreme Court was not bold, was not blunt. I agree with you. And the Supreme Court, in my opinion, the Supreme Court was supposed to come out straight to say that X, Y, Z went wrong. On the basis of that, do not proceed with the holding of the referendum. Point blank. That's what they were supposed to do. But they didn't do that. But the way they passed the judgment, in the best interest of our country, the Elections Commission was not supposed to proceed. Based on the Supreme Court ruling, they were supposed to engage with the legislature right away, because the legislature, the one that acted, the legislature acted by passing a resolution. They were supposed to engage with them and say, hey, this is not possible for us to do. and for us to sufficiently educate and inform the voters to be able to move them to vote. We cannot hold this. We need to postpone this. And that thing can be done by the legislature in the twinkling of an eye. To pass a resolution is just like undoing it. You go back 2/3, go back. With a unanimous vote, go back and undo the resolution to postpone the holding of the referendum in the best interest of the country. We wasted resources. If the 8 propositions don't pass, then it will be a waste of resources. It will be a waste of time. Then we'll be making it difficult again for citizens to have confidence in participating in any other referendum, because to reintroduce those issues will be difficult again. You reintroduce them again, they will think that this is not a serious business. So every time they hear about referendum, they think that you're joking, you're kidding. They think that you make it fun, and it's not real fun. It's not fun.
So Joe,
yeah.
Your recommendation that you did make that, hey, postpone the referendum, conduct a referendum in a year that you're not conducting an election, maybe that will make a difference. What is the guarantee in that? How would that have made a difference, or how you think that can make a difference?
Look, let me tell you something. We had a constitution in this country in 1820. When we got to 1847, we got a new constitution. When we got to 1986, we got a new constitution. We adopted a new constitution. I've been very consistent with the experience of the Constitution Reform Committee that was set up by Madame Saliv, and the beautiful work that they did. It sets the stage for us to have a new constitution in Liberia. Let me tell you something. You see, the 1986 constitution, I always call it a Samuel Doe constitution. That constitution was intended to satisfy, the Western world, because Samuel Doe had to return the government to a civilian government, and he had to have a constitution to govern by, not by decrees. And when that constitution was initially drafted by the Amos Sawyer Committee, we had a lot of good things in the Amos Sawyer draft. For example, paramilitary and military officers participating in elections was not in there. And people like Doe, were going to be affected by that. The issue of Article 52C, making sure that Liberians who want to run for president have to be in the country for 10 years, even though it doesn't say whether or not they should be in the country 10 years consecutively. That is still ambiguous and subject to the Supreme Court's interpretation. Plus so many things about political parties set up and everything, and the overwhelming power of the executive in the Constitution. There is time now for us to be able to do a complete constitutional reform if we should improve governance in our country, because we still have an imperial presidency. And it is not the individual who becomes president in our country decides to be imperial. It is the Constitution that makes them. Because if you as an individual have to make hundreds of appointments across government, and all those people have to look up to you, work at your will and pleasure, that alone is enough to make you an imperial president. We have to change that in our country. If our elections law don't have thresholds, so that political parties can meet those thresholds in elections based on votes, and then you can revoke, their certificates if they don't meet the threshold. So you can keep a sizable group of political parties to improve the political landscape. You are going to have problems in this country.
So, is your group recommending? Is your group recommending a new constitution as a solution for this or for these referendum failures that we are having?
If you don't, exactly, that's what I'm going to. That's what this point I'm driving home intended to do. Look, if you don't deal with those issues in the Constitution, we're still going to have serious governance issues in our country. You are going to have a powerful executive protecting their cronies, their friends, who will be very corrupt. And that has been a consistent thing that is entrenched in our governance system. And so, successive governments have indulged in corruption for decades, and people go with impunity. These are the so-called people who are respected in society. These are the so-called rich people, of the sweat of the ordinary citizens who continue to suffer and languish in abject poverty. That's what happened. It's because of the structure of our laws. We have to change it. And we've said that we need to adopt a new constitution. That's what we need to do. And that's what the CRC process sought to do. But at the end of it, it was circumvented by Madame Salif herself. That is why I said she destroyed any legacy that she was supposed to be enjoying by now. I've said that a million times. I even mentioned it in my book, and I talk about some of the issues in my book, the danger of celebrating power. I said it, at the end of the day, this was supposed to be about adopting a new constitution. Let me tell you why. The CRC process derived 352,000 plus issues from consultations that were held in Liberia and in the diaspora, particularly in Ghana and in the United States of America. There were 73 in total of those consultations that were held. 352,000. We put enormous resources in that process. And of the 352,000 plus issues that were derived, Liberians spoke out about the issues they had with the Constitution, about 352,000 plus of them. Of that, you were able to derive 25 propositions. Those 25 propositions were taken to Banga with a cross-section of the citizenry, all of us represented, about 500 of them in Banga. And they were able to adapt the 25 issues. Those 25 issues were officially submitted to the legislature. If you have 25 issues coming from 352 issues initially derived by citizenry across the country and in the diaspora, it tells you that our constitution has issues and it has to be reformed comprehensively. That is the reason why I've been calling, and the grassroots alternative movement has also been calling in a serious way for a comprehensive constitutional reform. And this is what we say in our request to the legislature also. We said to them, if you consider the postponement of the 2020 referendum, also begin to think about a possible way in which we can prepare for holding a referendum only to adopt a new constitution. Then the whole issue about decentralization of government can be spelled out in our constitution. The issue about reducing the power of the executive can be there, balancing the power amongst the three branches of government in a way that there can be realistic checks and balances. You can do that, which is very good for the improvement of governance in our country and bettering the lives of the people. And so Joe, we are seeing that from now to 2023, Ansoni, is a possibility. We all can work together with the government. And that can be a major milestone that Liberians can achieve. It's not just from a political perspective for the government or for the opposition, but for the Liberian people.
And so, Joe, you talk about how beautiful of a work the CRC did. I know you have knowledge of, some of the things being articulated in that, to constitute the constitutional reform that we need. Can you please share some of those with us? And are those things that you see in there enough based on your reading and understanding?
Basically, to talk about some of the same issues that we are having. Election date, for example.
Okay.
And I will speak about this based on my experience. In South Africa, they have their electoral act, which provides that the election date shall be set by the Electoral Commission in consultation with the executive. And the reason why they do that, they look at the weather, the different weather conditions of the year, and they look at the availability of resources and the flexibility on the part of the commission to have a date suitable for them to be able to deliver free, fair, and transparent elections. But Liberia's constitution provides for the date of election, Article 83A, so it's cast in stone. Whether or not we have the resources available, elections must be held on that day. Whether or not the Elections Commission is ready to deliver free, fair, and safe elections, election must be held on that day. One of the issues in the 25 in the list of 25 issues submitted to the legislature is the change of election day. We talk about land rights issues. We talk about inheritance issues. We talk about, there are so many things that they talk about in fact, the whole devolution of power, talking about decentralization, where the counties will have the right, to govern themselves under an umbrella governance process. Don't just look up to Monrovia, which is the administrative center. So you should have the counties governing themselves, having access to their resources, not the national government dictating on how they should do things in their counties, govern themselves. You have leaders elected at that level where they can make decisions in consultation with national government in the best interest of their people and how they can be held accountable. So we need to look at these issues and make sure that our Constitution reflects those values, those principles, and those standards that can improve the lives of our people. Look, we're not talking about reinventing the wheels here. Let me make that clear first. Government is continuity. We had a process in place. This government should pick up from there. The CRC report is available. The government has it. In fact, it is from the 25 propositions that they have been condensing, narrowing to the extent that they came to the 8 articles. They are from the 25 issues that were submitted. So this government has not even deviated from the 25 issues. So what we are saying, what GAME is saying, is that, hey, institute a measure whereby we can begin to look at what the CRC did, bring back on the table those issues they were able to identify with the Constitution, and then constitute a drafting committee to draft a new constitution on the basis of that, and with additional inputs from the citizenry, if there's going to be, so that we can be able to put to the Liberian people as a new constitution. That's all we are saying. And at that point in time, GIM will be able to make inputs if it finds it necessary, because GIM will also do a thorough review of the CRC report, especially the 25 propositions, and see if there's a need for addition, and still take a real look at the Constitution. If there are other issues that were left out that we can be able to add, and that can inform the drafting of an acceptable constitution, a constitution that will be, consistent with current realities. Trust me, many of the propositions in the 1986 Constitution are either archaic or are not consistent with current realities. And to govern with that kind of instrument is going to be very difficult. It's going to be difficult because the any actions of the government will be on the basis of the law. It has to be.
Josiah said there's no sound. I apologize. All the comments I read were not adhered to. Jimmy here again, civics. People need to understand what they are voting for. Benjamin Jolan, people keep saying enough education, and I agree now. What is enough education? He's asking a question. Josiah again, most Liberians want to see everything in the Constitution and forget that it is a framework. That is why civic education is necessary. A few comments there, Joe, from our viewers here. Your response to the comments.
Yeah. Let me just take the last one from Jackie, which is significant. It is because of that gap. We have that civic education gap in our country. We've been having it for a very long time. Something that citizens supposed to be aware of is fundamental. They're supposed to know that they have rights to the country they belong. They're supposed to know that they have a role to play to make that country better. They have a responsibility as citizens to work with their government to make that country better. The sad thing is that Liberians don't know. I've said over and over in so many places and so many platforms, including this one, that Liberians see the people they institute, people they put in leadership, as their leaders, as people who are doing them favor. That's how they see it. They have to move from that mindset to know that these people, it is just privilege they are giving them to be able to ensure that they deliver on their mandate, on improving their lives, giving them the decent economic standing, and making their country a better place to live. That is the gap we have in our country. And the very 1986 Constitution guarantees that citizens should be informed, they should be educated on what their Constitution is, because the Constitution guides the citizens to make them to know that right they have. In fact, they have that inherent right as citizens of their country, non-alienable, rights that they have, inalienable rights that they have, responsibilities that they have. It's guaranteed by the Constitution. Even Article 10 of the Constitution further guarantees that. It says that the Constitution shall be what? Published and disseminated, and its principles shall be taught in institutions of learning across the country. It doesn't say in some institutions. In institutions of learning, the Constitution should be taught at every level. And the significance of that is that citizens will get to know that it is their responsibility to make good decisions in terms of electing people who are supposed to look after their well-being. That citizens are supposed to work with those very people to make their country better and to improve their lives. And they have a responsibility to keep their environment, their community secure. They have the right to do that. So that has not been done in our country. And that's what we have recommended also. Over and over again, GAME has recommended, grassroots alternative movement has recommended. Like they have in places like Ghana. Ghana, they don't joke. They have a commission on a national commission on civic education in Ghana. And because of that commission on national civic education, the citizens are aware that is a sustained civic education program that takes place in Ghana, all parts of the country. They educate citizens on a daily basis through radio programs, through TV programs, what you should do, the do's and don'ts, your role in the governance process, your responsibility as a citizen. They do it. When you're talking about having an informed society, it's because of the role that the government plays, because the government has a fundamental role to play in that process. Citizens have roles to play, like I've said. The government role is fundamental because they lead the process. So they have to do that. And that is the gap that we have in our country. It's like everyone is on his own in Liberia. And so when you are telling a group of people who don't have the slightest idea about what they need to do to improve their own well-being, what the responsibility of their government is to them, and how they are supposed to hold their government accountable, when you have such a group of people and you're telling them, oh yeah, let the citizens go and do what they can do to help themselves, it's like telling somebody to go and commit suicide. That's what's happening in our country. And that's what the kind of decisions are made when we're making decisions, about elective positions, electing people to elective positions in our country, about how citizens respond to their own hygiene activities. Somebody will eat banana and throw the peeling in the street. It's wrong. Individually, they're supposed to know that it's wrong. But do we have any national effective hygiene mechanism that will penalize people who will do that will take action against people who will do that so that they don't do it the next time and others follow the do? The answer is a resounding no. We don't have those kind of measures in place.
We don't have. Thank you so very much. We have exhausted our 1 hour. We have another program coming in, and so we can't thank you enough for always honoring our invitation here. You and your team there at the Grassroots Alternative Movement in your advocacy on issues of democracy. Again, we thank you and thank you. In 1 minute, democracy remains a challenge in Liberia. What do you have to say to your fellow citizens? Because this democracy, we must practice it. I think it's the best model for governance. Final words.
Yeah, I think, usually when I'm on Facebook, I hear people, posting, and when they have said what they want to say, I increase the volume. And people are laughing and say, yes, increase the volume, So I will ask citizens to increase this volume. The call for a comprehensive constitutional reform. Let's adopt a new constitution. You want to ask if we have time? Yes, we have time. We should begin to act now, because Article 92 provides that whenever a resolution is passed for a referendum to be conducted, that action should be taken 1 year after the action of the legislature. Let's begin to work now. We have 2021 in fall. We have 2022 in fall. We have those 2 years before the elections. If we want to do it, we can do it. There's nothing we can't do if we work together as a team, as a country. We can do it. And if we reform our constitution in a comprehensive way, adopt a new constitution that will reflect our ideals, the hope and aspiration of the Liberian people, we will be able to improve governance in Liberia, and we can put our country on the trajectory of our collective interest. Thank you.
Josiah Joekai there with his final words. I think you heard him. Folks, we can't say thank you enough for following our broadcast here at Focus on Liberia. As always, the closing song that says, we are all Liberians. Enjoy that song, and bye-bye from us. We'll see you soon.
We are Liberians. Liberia is our home. Liberian people. Liberia.